Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week is Parashah number 12, Vayechi, he lived. It's going to be in Genesis chapter 47, starting in verse 28. I'll give everyone a chance to get turned there. Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. Thus Yaakov lived to be 147 years old. The time came when Israel was approaching death. So he called for his son Yosef and said to him, "If you truly love me, please put your hand under my thigh and pledge that out of consideration for me, you will not bury me in Egypt. Rather, when I sleep with my fathers, you are to carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried." He replied, "I will do as you have said." He said, "Swear it to me." And he swore it to him. Then Israel bowed down at the head of his bed. A while later, someone told Yosef that his father was ill. He took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Yaakov was told, "Here comes your son Yosef." Israel gathered his strength and sat up in bed. Yaakov said to Yosef, El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, saying to me, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make of you a group of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants to possess forever. Now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be as much mine as Reuben and Shimon are. The children born to you after them will be yours, but for the purposes of inheritance they are to be counted with their older brothers. Now as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died suddenly as we were traveling through the land of Canaan, while we were still some distance from Ephrat. So I buried her there on the way to Ephrat, also known as Beit Lechem. Then Israel noticed Yosef's sons and asked, "Whose are these?" Yosef answered his father, "These are my sons, whom God has given me here." Yaakov replied, "I want you to bring them here to me, so that I can bless them." Now Israel's eyes were dim with age, so that he could not see. Yosef brought his sons near to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Yosef, "I never expected to even see you again, but God has allowed me to see your children too." Yosef brought them out from between his legs and prostrated himself on the ground. Then Yosef took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. But Israel put out his right hand and laid it on the head of the younger one, Ephraim, and put his left hand on the head of Manasseh. He intentionally crossed his hands, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Then he blessed Yosef, "The God in whose presence my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak lived, the God who has been my own shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has rescued me from all harm, bless these boys. May they remember who I am and what I stand for, and likewise my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak, who they were and what they stood for. And may they grow into teeming multitudes on the earth." When Yosef saw that his father was laying his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him, and he lifted up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head and place it instead on Manasseh's head. Yosef said to his father, "Don't do it that way, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know that, my son, I know it. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will grow into many nations." Then he added this blessing on them that day, "Israel will speak of you in their own blessings by saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Israel then said to Yosef, "You see that I am dying, but God will be with you and will bring you back to the land of your ancestors. Moreover, I am giving to you a Shechem, more than to your brothers. I captured it from the Amoree with my sword and bow." Then Yaakov called for his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, and I will tell you what will happen to you in the Acharit HaYamim. Assemble yourselves and listen, sons of Yaakov. Pay attention to Israel, your father. Reuven, you are my firstborn, my strength, the firstfruits of my manhood. Though superior in vigor and power, you are unstable as water, so your superiority will end, because you climbed into your father's bed and defiled it. He climbed onto my concubine's couch. Shimon and Levi are brothers, related by weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let my honor not be connected with their people. For in their anger they killed men, and in their whim they maimed cattle. Cursed be their anger, for it has been fierce. Let their fury, for it has been cruel. I will divide them in Yaakov and scatter them in Israel. Yehuda, your brothers will acknowledge you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down before you. Yehuda is a lion's cub. My son, you stand over the prey. He crouches down and stretches like a lion, like a lioness. Who dares to provoke him? The scepter will not pass from Yehuda, nor the ruler's staff from between his legs, until he comes to whom obedience belongs. And it is he whom the peoples will obey. Tying his donkey to the vine, his donkey's colt to the choice grapevine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will live at the seashore, with ships anchoring along the coast, and his border at Zidon. Yissachar is a strong donkey lying down in the sheep sheds. On seeing how good is settled life and how pleasant the country, he will bend his back to the burden and submit to forced labor. Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a viper on the road, a horned snake in the path that bites the horse's heels, so its rider falls off backward. I wait for your deliverance, Adonai. Gad, a troop will troop on him, but he will troop on their heel. Asher's food is rich. He will provide food fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Yosef is a fruitful plant by a spring, with branches climbing over the wall. The archers attacked him fiercely, shooting at him and pressing him hard, but his bow remained taut, and his arms were made nimble. By the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov, from the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father, who will help you, by El Shaddai, who will bless you with blessings from heaven above, blessings from the deep lying below, blessings from the breast and the womb. The blessing of your father are more powerful than the blessings of my parents, extending to the farthest of the everlasting hills. They will be on the head of Yosef, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Binyamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, in the evening still dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is how their father spoke to them and blessed them, giving each his own individual blessing. Then he charged them as follows: I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah by Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought together with the field from Ephron the Hittite as a burial place belonging to him. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Yitzhak and his wife Rivka, and there I buried Leah. the field and the cave in it, which was purchased from the sons of Het. When Yaakov had finished charging his sons, he drew his legs up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Amen.
Morning, Seed. Good to see you today. You know, today's Torah portion brings the book of Genesis to a close. And it revolves around the death of Jacob. Jacob's prophetic blessings over each surviving son. And it ends with Joseph's death. But perhaps one of the most mysterious and hard to explain elements of these passages is this cross-handed blessing in which Jacob literally adopted Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and made them his own sons. That is, whereas at the beginning of that day, those two boys were Jacob's grandsons, by the end of that day, they had become Jacob's sons that were to be on the same footing and status as all other of Jacob's sons. And since the Torah portions that will follow depend upon us understanding what went on here, then it's just critical that we get a good grasp of this. We have to understand how this is going to affect Israel going forward. So we're going to necessarily have to absorb some information today. Now, the final few chapters of Genesis don't disappoint as they pull together what we need to know in order for the history of Israel and of redemption to advance. Now, one of the effects of this adoption and blessing by Jacob is that the firstborn blessing was finally assigned. And it was assigned to Joseph. Or was it? The firstborn blessing is a critical matter within Hebrew families. It determines which of the children born to a family will be preeminent over all the others. It might seem to be self-evident that the first child, usually the first son, born to a man, is the firstborn, as the name itself implies. And while that's the case more often than not, it doesn't have to be that way. Because the firstborn is more of a title for a special status, for an office, if you would, within a family, than it is about denoting actual birth order. In fact, it is a characteristic of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that their birth order and the birth order of their sons was not observed in order to determine the office of the firstborn. Abraham was not the eldest son of his father Terah. He was either the second or third after Haran and Nahor. Isaac wasn't Abraham's first son, Ishmael was. Jacob wasn't Isaac's first son to be born, Esau was. And as we read, Reuben, although Jacob's first son to be born, did not receive the blessing of the office of the firstborn. So one of the things we see in the strange cross-handed blessing is that Jacob also commands that Joseph's second-born son, Ephraim, is to be given preeminence over his first son, Manasseh. Even so, because Jacob has now adopted Joseph's two sons away from him, Ephraim is not assigned the status and office of firstborn among all of Jacob's sons in any traditional way. Now, one of the inherent attributes of the firstborn blessing, which is when the father officially designates the one to be given the status and office of firstborn, is that the one who receives it gets a double portion compared to his siblings. Okay? In fact, another name used in the Bible for the firstborn blessing is the double portion blessing. The two terms traditionally mean the same thing. That is, the son who receives the firstborn blessing gets double or more of the clan's wealth, twice as much as everyone else. Now, Joseph's double portion, that was manifested in that Joseph was to get 2 full portions of Israel itself. How can that occur? By making Joseph's 2 boys Jacob's own sons. Each of Joseph's sons then were entitled to a full share of all the wealth and authority and inheritance equal with their new brothers. Think of it this way. All the other sons of Israel, from Reuben right down to Benjamin, since including Joseph, there were 12 of them, was each entitled to an inheritance of 1/12 of all that their father Jacob, also called Israel, possessed. But since Joseph's 2 sons were now considered Jacob's sons, each of them also received an equal share. Each would become their own tribe of Israel. So Joseph's family, Joseph's tribe, was multiplied to 2 tribes. Joseph got the double portion blessing in that he received 2 shares of Israel, 1 each for Ephraim and for Manasseh, whereas all the other sons got but 1. But now the math no longer works. Because with the additions of Ephraim and Manasseh to the original 12 sons of Jacob, there would seem to be 14 sons, 14 tribes of Israel. And we all know about the 14 tribes of Israel. So why are we dividing by 12ths and not 14ths? Because Joseph himself did not receive a 12th in addition to each of his sons receiving shares. The idea was that by giving Joseph's 2 sons each a portion of Israel, 1/12 each, the effect was the same as giving Joseph 2/12, a double portion. Now, the long-term effect is the tribe of Joseph would be represented as a tribe of Israel by his 2 sons, each of them given their own tribe. But there's still a problem with the math when we attempt to speak of the 12 tribes of Israel. Even with removing Joseph from the list of the tribes of Israel and replacing him with his 2 sons, you still have 13 tribes and not 12. Right? Okay, the original 12 minus Joseph equals 11. Add in the 2 sons of Joseph, we get 13. What gives? Do we ever get back to 12 tribes of Israel? Well, we do. And we find that in the first chapter of the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 1, starting in verse 44. Moshe, Aharon, and the 12 leaders of Israel, each from a clan, counted the people of Israel by their clans, those 20 years old and over, eligible for military service in Israel. And the grand total came to 603,550. But those who were the Levites, according to the clan of their fathers, were not counted in the census. Because Adonai had told Moshe, do not include the clan of Levi when you take the census of the people of Israel. Instead, Give the Levites charge over the tabernacle of the testimony, its equipment, everything else connected with it. They are to carry the tabernacle, all of its equipment, serve in it, and set up their camp around it. And when the tabernacle is to be moved onward, it's the Levites who are to take it down and set it up in the new location, and anyone else who involves himself is to be put to death. The rest of Israel are to set up camp, company by company, each man with his own banner. But the Levites are to camp around the tabernacle of the testimony so that no anger will come upon the assembly of the people of Israel. The Levites are to be in charge of the tabernacle of the testimony. This is what the people of Israel did. They did everything that Adonai had ordered Moses. Now, a little later in Numbers, we read this, Numbers 3, starting at verse 11. Adonai said to Moses, I have taken the Levites from among the people of Israel in lieu of every firstborn male that is from the womb among the people of Israel. The Levites are to be mine. All the firstborn males belong to me. Because on the day that I killed all the firstborn males in the land of Egypt, I separated for myself all the firstborn males in Israel, both human and animal. They're mine. I'm Adonai. What just happened here? First, the math works now. See, we're back to Israel consisting of 12 tribes. Levi was eliminated from the list of tribes of Israel. Okay. In reverse of Jacob adopting into Israel Joseph's 2 Egyptian sons, now God adopts Levi out of Israel. And they are no longer to be counted as among their brother tribes. I want to say this another way. Levi, as of that movement, was no longer part of the tribes of Israel. They were set apart. They were made into a separate category all by themselves. They are a one of one. So from here forward in our Bibles, we must read all that happens with Israel and with the priesthood that's populated only by the tribe of Levi in that context, and we must always keep in mind that the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh represent Joseph's tribe, as Joseph does not have a tribe named for him. A little complicated? Yes, but that's the nature of families. So now let's address another issue. The firstborn blessing consisted of more than the double portion of family wealth. It also included replacing the authority the family head held before he died. That is, the firstborn would become the new head of the family, the next ruler. Joseph did not receive that blessing, but his brother Judah did. When we get to chapter 49, we get a list of Jacob's sons and what he prophesies as their destinies, and there we find this concerning Judah in Genesis 49, 8 through 11. Judah, your brothers will acknowledge you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. My son, you stand over the prey. He crouches down and stretches like a lion, like a lioness. Who dares to provoke him? The scepter will not pass from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his legs until he comes to whom obedience belongs, and it is he who the people will obey. Tying his donkey to the vine, his donkey's colt to the choice grapevine, he washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. For our purposes, the key words are the scepter will not pass from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his legs. See, the scepter and the ruling staff, these are just 2 words meaning the same thing. Okay, a scepter is held by a ruler, as a symbol of his position and authority as a king or a chief or whatever. So what we learn is Judah is to receive that portion of the firstborn blessing that involves inheriting authority and power. Ephraim, on the other hand, all right, is going to get some fruitfulness, the wealth, the benefit, in other words, in the name of his father, Joseph. The benefits of the firstborn blessing have been split, such that Ephraim gets one part, Judah gets the other, because that's what got handed down. Remember, Joseph was turned over his two sons, and who got preeminence? Ephraim. So it went to Ephraim. Now let's follow this historically. Beginning with David, King David. Judah, that was David's tribe, unequivocally ruled over all Israel. Ephraim, on the other hand, well, he had a huge territory of fertile land, and they became wealthy and powerful as a result. Fast forward a few years. Solomon now becomes king, and he extends the authority and power of Judah even further. Fast forward again. Solomon dies. He has not named a successor, and so the nation falls into chaos. A civil war erupts. Israel becomes divided into two political blocs, the northern territories and the southern territories. The northern bloc, led by Jeroboam, becomes its own kingdom, and it's called Israel. The southern bloc, led by Rehoboam, becomes a second kingdom. It's called Judah. In reality, the northern kingdom is known synonymously as Israel and Ephraim. It goes by two names. Why Ephraim? Because Ephraim was the largest, most influential tribe among the 10 tribes that inhabited the northern territories. Judah was named Judah because of the two tribes that inhabited the south. Judah was the largest and most powerful, and of course, had a history of ruling. So we see now how the split firstborn blessing that gave part of Jacob's blessing to Ephraim through his father Joseph, and the other part to Judah, how this eventually played out in history. The split of the kingdom into two sets of tribes was so complete that after it happened, the biblical writers took to calling those tribes that populated each side of the split its own house. The 10 tribes of the north were the house of Israel. The 2 tribes of the south were the house of Judah. I'm going to say it again. This is so important. The northern kingdom was actually called Ephraim. Now, Judah retained Jerusalem as its capital. And so it had the all-important Levitical priesthood and the Holy Temple in its territory. Israel, however, the northern kingdom, Ephraim, was left out in the cold. So their king, well, he established his own new religious system to counter the one in Judah. He created a new priesthood. He built his own temple. Listen, this guy was not about to freely let his people travel to a rival kingdom to worship, to sacrifice, and to tithe. He created his own capital city called Samaria. The religious system of the northern kingdom even developed their own holy book. See, they modified the Torah to suit their agenda, and generally speaking, they abolished the remainder of the Tanakh of the Old Testament. But perhaps the king's greatest offense before God was that he fashioned a golden calf and he named it Yehovah. This was to be his people's object of worship. Notice how the split firstborn blessing of Jacob led to this unintended consequence. Better yet, notice how, because the largest, most influential population of the 12 tribes, Ephraim, was not satisfied with only the most wealth that he was bequeathed, he also wanted to hold the power. So when the time was ripe, he essentially broke away from the historical Hebrew faith, and he started his own, claiming that was truer to God. See, it didn't seem to matter that he dumped God's Torah, that he dismissed the writings of the prophets. He replaced God's designated holy city of Jerusalem with his own. He replaced God's designated tribe of Levi as his priest with a new and different group of people. And he replaced every trapping of the Hebrew faith that just didn't appeal to him. He still claimed that his kingdom and new religion represented God's proper will and faith. Any of this sound familiar? See, this is the same pattern we see happen in Christianity. In the 4th century AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine became a believer in Jesus, but he and his bishops couldn't fathom keeping the same religion as the Jews, nor in allowing Jews to oversee the faith that he now claimed, or the Jews having any role in it whatsoever. So, over the next decades and then beyond, a new religion was declared of, by, and for the Gentiles of the Roman Empire. Systematically, this new religious organization adopted Jesus of Nazareth as Lord and Savior, but then by decree, it dispensed with all else, including the Old Testament, because that was too connected with the Jews. The new holy city and faith capital became Rome. The new temple became what we call the Vatican. The new priesthood was headed by an appointed pope. A new holy book was created called the Christian Bible, which added a New Testament that in their minds overrode the Old Testament. Jesus was the God of this new faith, while Yehovah became relegated only as the God of the Jews. All of the Father's ordained appointed times were abolished, beginning with Sabbath. In time, new and different holy days were created. Easter, Christmas. They were to replace the old holy days of the Bible. And just as God operates in patterns, folks, so do humans. But as we learn from history, God catastrophically judged the kingdom of Ephraim, Israel, for their delusional wickedness. God sent Assyria to conquer them. And the 10 tribes headed by Ephraim were scattered to the 4 winds. Judah, too, eventually became so corrupted in its faith that about 130 years later, God judged them as well, and he sent Babylon to conquer and to haul them away to that country. Fellow believers of whatever faith name you might prefer to label yourselves, we need to pay attention. We need to learn the lesson of Ephraim, especially. If humans can form a religion the way we can form a new retail store or a new government, then eventually it's going to be dealt with by God. The Hebrews, beginning with Abraham, did not form a new religion, God formed the Hebrews. And then he revealed himself to them. Even though I grew up in it, I must confess that Constantinian Christianity is a man-made religion meant to replace the biblical faith. It is. It's not meant to uphold it. Each of us needs to think long and hard about our faith affiliations, because whatever the fate is of the organizations we belong to, that's going to become our fates as well. This reality is expressed not only in what happened to Ephraim, but it's also expressed in what's going to happen to all man-made religions in the future that go by whatever name they may want to call themselves. And no matter how sincere their leaders and their adherents are. Before God, sincerity counts for very little unless it's sincerity and worshiping Him in the proper way. Look, there is only one true biblical faith. And it's the one God gave to the Hebrews. There is only one true biblical Messiah. And it's the one God gave to the Hebrews. We really only have one choice. Either to join in that God-given faith and to accept their Messiah, or to join in one of the many man-made faiths and embrace theirs. That's it. Revelation 18. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority. The earth, it was lit up by his splendor, and he cried out in a strong voice, "She has fallen, she has fallen. Babel the Great, she has become a home for demons, a prison for every unclean spirit, a prison for unclean, hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of God's fury caused by her whoring. Yes, the kings of the earth went whoring with her. From her unrestrained love of luxury, the world's businessmen have grown rich." And then I heard another voice out of heaven say, "My people, come out of her, so that you won't share in her sins, so that you will not be infected by her plagues. For her sins are a sticky mass. They're piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes."
For more teaching and information, visit us online today. Come and be a part of our fellowship. Here at The Seed, enjoy worshiping and learning God's Word with us.